You're watching Sky News. The top stories. Theresa May's Joint Chiefs of Staff, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill, have resigned this lunchtime. In a statement, Mr Timothy said the general election result was a huge disappointment and that he regretted his role in drafting the social care proposals in the Conservative manifesto. The resignation comes as the Prime Minister has sent her Chief Whip, Gavin Williamson, to hold talks with the DUP in Belfast. Mr May is reshuffling her cabinet today. So far, the top 5 ministers have remained in their roles. Let's get some reaction on that breaking news on both the resignation of Theresa May's Joint Chiefs of Staff and that the Chief Whip, Gavin Williamson, is in Belfast for talks with the Democratic Unionist Party. From Westminster, I'm joined by Gavin Williamson, Director of Hanover Communications and former head of the Conservatives' Rapid Rebuttal Unit. And from Tunbridge Wells, I'm joined by Phillip Blond, former advisor to David Cameron and now director of Republican think tank. So starting with you, Phillip, just talk me through your reaction to those resignations this lunchtime.
Well, my first reaction is one of sadness. I think Nick Timothy was a very gifted man, and I think he had broadly the right idea. He was right to want to shape conservatism to appeal to the working class and working people. The trouble was, as I said, since the manifesto's been released, we had wonderful rhetoric, but the policies were a continuance of the same: austerity, meanness, errors on social care. So the problem with kind of Nick's agenda is we didn't go far enough and we weren't radical enough. And then if you look at, not that the agenda was wrong, and if you look at the Labour Party, they had big, expansive, radical programmes, nationalisation, abolishing students' tuition fees. We needed something that was the equal of that was emancipatory as that within the Conservative vernacular. And all we got is the continuance of austerity politics. So that was the error. So I regret that he goes. It's probably the right thing. But I think it's a mistake to read into it. We must go back to Osborne's liberal agenda, because that would lose, and would lose even more against Corbyn's agenda.
OK, and Gavin, bringing you in now, because I was reading an article earlier on about Theresa May's relationship with her Chiefs of Staff. They've worked together for so long. Essentially, they are her because they are so close. Can she survive and continue without them?
Well, look, I think it's probably the right thing to do today. I think Nick Timothy and Fiona will not have wanted to drag her down any more. Nick has been with her since the early 2000s when he first started at the Conservative Central Office. He's been incredibly important in shaping where she is and the strategy behind her, which was actually working up till a couple of weeks ago in the middle of the campaign. They had been positioned as a party and a leader who was trying to go beyond politics. The problem is the campaign brought that back into play and made her look like she was playing politics, and that was the problem. But it wasn't just about Nick Timothy and Fiona. There was many more big hitters involved who pulled the party down during this campaign.
And Phillip, the Chief Whip in Belfast for talks with the DUP this lunchtime. Do you think that they can create a union?
Yeah, I have no doubt about it. I mean, don't listen to the scare stories about the DUP. You'd think the way they're being painted as if they're some creatures from the outer rim of the galaxy. I think that's really sectarian and dreadful. I know many of them. I've worked with most of them. They're just social and fiscal conservatives, which is fine. That's a position. And I think actually the coalition, if we can call it that, even though it's not formal, will, I think, in many ways be more comfortable than the coalition with the Liberal Democrats. I think it's much likely to be stronger.
Oh, I do apologise.
Ideologically than the relationship with the Liberals. Sorry?
OK, and Gavin, bringing you in, because I saw you shaking your head there. Clearly in disagreement. We've heard controversy from the DUP with their stance on same-sex marriage, abortion.
Look, there's a reality of what's been happening with the DUP to this date with the Conservatives. They have been voting with Conservatives for many, many years. So in theory, not much changes. The problem for the Conservative Party is how they look if they form anything formal with the DUP, because the DUP are not socially liberal. A lot of their views are not justifiable here in mainland Britain. So that's a major issue for a party that is being dragged to look more and more nasty by Jeremy Corbyn and his very positive outlook. Alongside that, you also have an issue with the Good Friday Agreement. The whole point is the government must be neutral to allow that to work. I'm originally from Northern Ireland, and everyone I speak to has a big issue with this happening. They're very worried about what it means for the Good Friday Agreement, and we don't want anything to happen negatively back there.
And do you think Theresa May can survive this, and if so, for how long?
Well, I think she has to survive this. We're in a really difficult situation as a country. Theresa May is the only way forward at present. Not to have Theresa May there and to have a leadership battle in the Conservative Party where Europe would be the main issue, opening up new fissures that we thought we'd closed down, would be a disaster for the country when we're about to negotiate Brexit. She's the only way forward. It doesn't mean she'll survive for a very long time, but at the minute she is the only way forward.
And Philip, what does this deal mean for Northern Ireland? Because they are likely to benefit from it, aren't they?
Well, one would hope so. I mean, I think that, I probably differ. I mean, just to repeat, I think it's perfectly fine within the context of conservatism. The DUP are just social conservatives, and that is, I don't think, an anathema to everybody else. And social liberalism, and I think this has been the story of the past few years, hasn't delivered for working class people. So I think it's just not the case that they are people we can't talk to. I think that's kind of propaganda. But I think that I think the point, though, about the Northern Irish situation, the Good Friday Agreement, is a real one. How can the British government be viewed as neutral in the Sinn Féin DUP unionist debate if the DUP are keeping the Conservatives in power? And I do agree that I think the key is to keep this informal, because the DUP have been supporting the Conservatives anyway and voting with them, and try to maintain that neutrality. But I also think that it's imperative that Theresa May steadies the ship. But what I think she's got to do is recognise that she won't go to the country again. I think we do have to have another election for the Conservative leadership, but within a longer time frame, within a year, at the outside 2 years, because the majority, I think, of only 2 will not survive very long. So I actually think it's very important that we create a new agenda for a new leader. I think that needs to happen sooner rather than later, because I think the new leader, who I suspect will come from outside the cabinet, will have to form a new vision.
If you don't mind me interrupting, who do you think is likely to take the leadership after Theresa May?
Well, I think there's a number of very gifted people outside of the cabinet, many of whom I've been talking to, but I'm not going to say who they are. But I think there's appetite amongst a lot of MPs who are outside of the cabinet for a completely new entrant. And I think that new entrant, whoever it be, and if they succeed, will need a good year to put in place their vision, a different agenda, and actually continue along the pathway that Theresa May has opened up in terms of being pro-working class, but not quite so sectarian, and also build links to the cosmopolitan middle class who are increasingly terrified of Brexit. So I think that's
a few names you can share with us.
No, I'm not going to. But I have been in conversation with 3 very good backbenchers this morning who are considering putting their name in the ring. I don't think anyone will do it in the immediate short term, because I think it's important that Theresa May establishes some stability. But I think the stability she's got to establish will be for how can one put it, for a crafted election contest. It can't be a coronation, because I think the backbenchers won't wear it. I think we've got to have an open leadership contest, and I suspect it will be sooner rather than later. And the new leader will need at least a year before he or she goes to the electorate.
OK, so let's bring in Gavin there, because I can see him shaking his head through much of that. Gavin, let's talk about Brexit. Is there a chance that now we will go for a softer approach, perhaps staying within the customs union and within the single market?
I think it's definitely up for grabs. There's going to be a big debate on this, and the Impact of the DUP, we will see today with Gavin Williamson whether they will be pushing it towards any softer Brexit, because they have just apparently done a deal behind the scenes in Northern Ireland with their potential partners in a government over there. So we'll see what happened in that and whether they'll want that to come through into the national Brexit positioning. But the point is, I would disagree with Philip. I think there's a lot of navel-gazing in the Conservative Party. We're always looking at who's making a move, who isn't making a move. This is a time for stability in the country. People don't want more politics. People want Brexit sorted out. This is a constitutional crisis for the country if that does not happen, and we just need to get on with it.
I'm afraid that we're not going to...
Go on, Philip.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I mean, I agree with those points, but we're not going to get it. We've got, I think, a working majority of 2. That won't last. There were, I think, some 20 by-elections over the last 2 years. This won't last. We don't have the stability we need, and I think any stability that we have will be a matter of months. So I think that the scenario that I've outlined is the reality. The wish to have stability is, I think, fanciful, given how slim the majority is, how emboldened the Labour Party will be, how much they will challenge. And, you know, it's not even clear. It only takes one person to differ with the government's, with any government position to plunge us back there. We don't have the time, I'm afraid. So I think the scenario
let's bring in Gavin here. Gavin, last word with you.
Absolutely. I would say no one's saying it's going to be easy. This is a terrible situation for any government to be in. What I'm saying is it's important that the Conservative Party and the commentators out there who support the Conservative Party are not talking them into instability, because that would be a disaster for the country.
OK, thanks very much to both of you. And I just want to read a statement that's been issued on Twitter from Fiona Hill now. She says, "It's been a pleasure to serve in government and a pleasure to work with such an excellent Prime Minister. I've no doubt at all that Theresa May will continue to serve and work hard as Prime Minister, and she will do it brilliantly." So that response there from Fiona Hill, who has resigned this lunchtime as Chief of Staff. But you're watching Sky News. Coming up in the sport, can England's cricketer